The next poet who's coming up is somebody whom most people don't know as a poet. He is more well known as a young politician, and he is Varun Gandhi, to put it mildly. It's quite interesting because when I was young and a young theatre person, one of the first plays I did was his mother's book called Brahma's Hair, which he did as an entire production for a long time. But because he's coming in, and there are a bunch of political poems. Now this is interesting because poetry, we were talking about this in the morning, is not just about the personal space. It's also about the community. And there were lots of poets who have become famous or become voices of their generation. One such very famous poet is now not known to you as a poet. Yeah. His name was Bertolt Brecht. All right? And there's a very, very short poem that he wrote. It's called The Burning of the Books. When the regime commanded that books with harmful knowledge should be publicly burned, and on all sides oxen were forced to drag cartloads of books to the bonfires, a banished writer, one of the best, scanning the list of the burned, was shocked to find that his books had been passed over. He rushed to his desk on wings of wrath and wrote a letter to those in power. "Burn me," he wrote with flying pen, "burn me. Haven't my books always reported the truth? And you are treating me like a liar. I command you, burn me." And now I'd like to invite Varun Gandhi on stage.
Good evening. I'm deeply grateful to have been invited here. And I don't think we have too much time, so should I just start reading? I've written 2 books of poetry, but what I'm going to read today is from something that hasn't been published, which is poems that I've been working on for the last 6 months. Thematically, they're very similar, and so I'm just going to start. I'd be very grateful if you could switch off your phones, please. Should I start? Okay, the first poem is called Arcana. Yesterday, what did you say to me when we didn't speak? You asked me for something which now you won't say, which you shall ask me every day and wait for me to feel it till I ask you if that is really what you want. Like an impatient prospector, I head to the mountains. They have a desolate smile. I like the cold. It numbs you, forcing you to look inward, onto the wasteland of the material universe. The large spaces are a vessel for second sight. I try to still my mind, to reach a certain level of gnosis. But there's no such thing. It's just the oblivion of enormous imaginings. I believed I had to be committed to the truth, but the truth is just half performance and half how much one can endure. Away from the world, I rise, nature being a distillate of an older, truer power, an ingress into the hidden things inside us. I struggle to carry the day, but I haven't the confidence to self-destruct. I'm glad, finally, when the night steps in, at first concealed and then brilliantly lit. Yesterday, what did you say to me when we didn't speak? I try and listen harder every day. I remember you picked a lemon and it pierced your skin and your blood ran all over it. I kept it for so long, the silly thing. Death doesn't end relationships, it just changes them. I'd be very grateful if you could you just ask them to keep quiet, please? Because there was a lot of noise. This one is called The Unforgivable Night. From the water born, an imminent fire raged, my days drowning endlessly, expecting to be rescued by the first stranger I met. Falling faster through these reeds leaves me dulled, sleepier than an evening by a fire. The comfort of shadows claims me as its own. At the margins of memory, I rest my head. I don't expect to see so many old friends, their embers of resentment I'd replaced in my mind. As the lamp burns with an unforgivable longing, alighting from a celestial hunger. In what is hardly a sleep, I dream in warm, beastly colors, which offer no rescue from this angry blue hurt within, that speaks in a hushed baritone and lives in shaded places. I'm awakened by my desire into a different time, which seems apposite in the syntax of dissent that we survive in. Underneath its suggestion, there lies an instructive calm, to not answer the sound of the sea, to eat a small part of darkness offered. This one is called Birthday, and oddly enough, I wrote it on my birthday, although it's not very happy. In my boxed heart, I have kept for you my most bejeweled and sacralized idea of me, the best of my incompleteness, of what I could have been, of all my shadows disseminated through a primal transference. The tired light within me shining on these gifts of providence and their language of changing communication. Through these fictive winds within, I defocus. The world blurs away from its lost abundance into various shades of grays and browns, and blood brilliant, I hand you my animus. All my previous loves, these burnt addictions of mine, they don't call out to me anymore. Can you take me to that field where we find love again? Is it too late to come home through these darkened roots of the past? Through your half-moon eyes, forever or a long time ago, is it all right if blind in the face of your incidental gaze, I return half a hero? This poem is called Revolution, but it has very little to do with revolution. That which has to die, dies, but my dreams keep going over their path, gifted with the responsibility of defiance, chancing their fate, busking their fare, paying their fare, basking their sound against the foretelling sky. Every great war, fueled by indignation, kneels before a sympathetic strangeness that shapes the uninitiated with the colors that lose themselves in brightness. By mountains and this ashen ground, for reasons told to me, I remain a runaway. The wheel turns larger and larger, carrying forward our fears, leading them into a glorious fever. Another lifetime away from silence, wasted as a passenger called into this burning train. This one is called Bodies. Bodies, when tired, turn black, emitting signs that they need to move to a quiet kind of freedom. Amongst the light live objects on show with subtitled explanations and triggered associations. Above judgment and victimhood lies a refuge for the mind, truly as it is, sacrificing the need for consciousness and the struggle for aesthetic interaction. There lies a memory exhuming evidence through stagnation and transition of what metaphors we represented, of how contained by bruises we remained. Sepulchered in the dissection of being, unveiled identities disappear into the hierarchy of the ether. Guarding the gate is an inveigling puzzle, forcing an abandonment of any feeling of estrangement of what has just passed. What actually happens when we build monuments to our expression? Is it merely a foray against the immeasurable crime of being alive? This one is called Love, but I write lots of poems called Love for some strange reason. It's a very sad poem. and it's the one I wrote day before yesterday. I make you my home, I clean out my heart, decant all my thoughts, sanitize them, sever all extraneous emotions that make me want more, surround myself with niceties, filter out all conversation that challenges, listen intently, lose all sense of the past, forget there was ever a day where I had expectations. Will you want me then? Will you stay? Then perhaps I can be in peace, with love flowing intravenously through me and happiness entering my windpipe through a tube. So basically this poem is about the fact that if you give up, every single bit that makes you alive for love, then are you dead or are you in fact loved? Knowing, immersion in an imagined state is not owning what you experience. Picking up the color that you encounter bit by bit, the mystical idea of something never staying the same. Things reorganizing themselves perpetually till they find a unity, the intimacy of the blur that a vast space inevitably becomes. The ambiguity of seeing even the elements in fragments as the brutal lattice of matter fastens tightly, imposing its own validity. In nature, I'm protected by something that can't be found, that lends itself to you, to show you a way to communicate viscerally past logic and metaphor. In time, I become just a window that opens into the wind that enters me trembling, fearful, not just of what it has seen, but aware of the constant vigilance of the eyes that watch me, the eyes that remind me of how tired of myself I am, till I become more the answer to a question. This poem is called Don't Talk to the Past. Days gone by need no names. They are already drowned in your idea of them. The past is a portrait frozen in purpose, seemingly inside you, but really it waits in its own sense of time, staring. You say days gone by cancel a debt, but my search for them enslaves me, leaving inside me only this childish need for an immediate absolution. This life and this love I remember is a kind of deixis. I need to know more before I fully understand, before I can reduce it to its essence in which it made me feel what it wanted me to feel. Slowly but faithfully, I source my stubborn refusal. It comes from an induced memorializing, centered around echoes, compelling and heroic, explanations of times gone by. We have been what we have always been. I know that by the way our challenges honor us. I know that from the indomitable self given to me. This poem that I'm about to read, I actually like this poem quite a bit. It's called Winter Garden, and I wrote this for some strange reason after my grandmother died. I didn't think about her for a long time, but then many years later, I just couldn't get her out of my mind. My maternal grandmother, my nani, and it's just strange that things come to you when they come to you. It's called Winter Garden, and I wrote it actually in Uttarakhand, which is kind of a winter garden. I come to this place to feel invested in a forgotten commonwealth. In the world, I am but melting snow, covered in rain, slowly forming an outlet as I stay the winter within. But in this world of no audience and no provocation, I am that manner of sleeplessness which gives off no frailty in its desire to ascend. Trees don't judge the peace of the inanimate. The grass doesn't wonder whether it will survive the sound of this calm. I walk into this garden walled, treating my journey as a pilgrimage. My eyes communicate a fluent promise as they coruscate, almost citrine through the cloudy chill, As I cross these worlds, I feel a broken bridge with my hopes burdening the earth and the garden aging. Soaking in my days, I miss you more than before today. I feel your absence very strongly, but I perceive loss differently the more I lose. I don't think I owe myself more rules of confinement. My thoughts are not an underground railroad through which I rescue the leaderless resistance of what is now the past. This one is called In Separation. Whenever you want me to stop reading and, ask me something or whatever, that's fine as well. Because otherwise I'll just keep reading. In separation. From the origin, I was used to a kind of displacement. But instead of believing in the emergence of a new construction, I proclaimed an armistice and signed it with my soul partitioned into spaces. I carried forth my dethroned ego and the amplified sense of time it created. I accepted that within me there was an atonality, but I felt tonal centers within that existing, and that I was a reaction to that which had immediately preceded me. In time, you are given an unnatural patina, which serves to protect you. From seed to seed, in burning truths, one stands the course, in energy bright, the dark beginning to peel its verse at night, a natural defoliant, unfolding a clasp, unleashing a violent syncopation. History is a material thing to provoke and abuse till you celebrate it as your captive. Even in detachment, you burn for the truth. When you burn, it's a victory against the successive psychology of dissent. What these poems are basically about is that happiness and sadness both exist implicationally. They would never exist without each other. So they, जैसे हिंदी में कहते हैं, उनके आधे आधे दांत एक दूसरे में हैं. But the fact remains that what I see as the end or as failure or as dissent is the inability to feel. And that is what really these poems are about, is whether you're feeling in warm beastly colors or you're feeling in cold pastel colors, the fact that you're feeling itself is an annunciation of strength, an annunciation of hope. And that's the thread that runs through all of these. Empire. Nobody wants them, the defeated. On either side of ether, those dedicated to paradox make me a gift of the night, which shields me as I love to the point of madness. I watch them in the war against the inert, the creatures dominated by chance. My heart told me to be quiet, that the night wouldn't exist without stealth, without anonymity, but I can't. To those who have raged against plasticity and been torn in the briars of truth, bravery carries its own serendipity. It's time to create a new inviolable canon, to defend the indignant. In any case, fighting the good fight opens the way to an inner heart trail, the unsettling viscera of righteous anger. This poem is very different from all the rest that I'll say today for a reason, because I found that everything was going the same way, so I wanted to unsettle myself a little. So this is very different, and I'll read it and you'll know why. It's called The Goddess. There's a goddess who visits me every day. She tells me her story. She used to be a bride, a virgin bride. On her wedding day, dacoits looted and murdered her entire family. Husband, father, all. She lay in her blood and accepted the divine. Now she exists as a goddess. But she hasn't forgotten her cries or screams, and she hasn't forgiven any involved. She's outside karma now, but constantly in the womb of agony. What does it mean to remember? Is it important what has happened? Does it live within us to make us humane? Or is this the hell in which we burn, burn for our original sin? She whispers to me powerfully, love is an oath of blood. It's not a catacomb which you build in reaction to your personal desperation. I wonder whether it's an equal exchange, this life, this weight that we carry in the expectation that someone will accept us, validate us. I had a dog. He's dead now. He went with anyone. He seemed happy enough. I tell the goddess about him. It makes things lighter. Sorry, yeah. I'll tell you what made me write it, to be honest. I felt that a lot of the poetry contained a lot of sadness. And then I suddenly thought that sadness itself is so transient. And it's so affected, in a way. It's so pretentious. And I suddenly thought that maybe one should write about something that is showing a mirror to something and in turn showing that thing how ridiculously pretentious it really is. Do you see what I'm saying? So when I'm talking about this goddess in her terrible anxiety, her intensity, how she's gone above karma and now accepted the divine and everything, and how she's still in misery, and then suddenly I say, I had a dog. He was a pretty happy guy. He went with anyone. I tell the goddess about him. It makes things lighter. So I'm just juxtaposing those two different things. Wandering discontent. I used to talk to the trees, slowly and respectfully, implored by this constellation of calm, past the cascade of defeated endeavor. I listened to their fields when they fell into a numbness, when it was clear that another song had been yielded to that mountain that had forsaken all sound. I felt my emotions fuse the day they found equilibrium, like all colors that look at white as the end of their journey. I saw that to rail incessantly against the war to come would to be already having lost. The sacred and the scared are interwoven with the idea that their impenetrable narrative is a thief which spends all its time running from joy, releasing that which lives in the unexplored spaces within. Our truths are all imagined contradiction, rubbing off against an illusory search, when all we seek is to be consigned to life without longing. You have to struggle to welcome this hot struggle of a dream, the genealogy of pain as told by a wandering discontent. This is a poem called The War as Other. It collects within, as a response to the past, a sacred treasure, arriving in wartime, at first exhibiting a softness reflective of the cost of suffering, in a parched landscape that forces function onto me. It asks, to whom does this inquiry speak? Bent into contemplation, your voice like rain has forgotten anger. Past emotion, these cold walls, their vespers within, it wants to know their colors, a private darkening or a gray in hiding. In that which is buried in this anemic longing, the buried warrior whispers, a call to arms is a joyful sacrifice. He seeks to recreate the mutilated courtship of desire, awakening his intern sin sculpted in high relief to bring forth a writhing invasion. The evening has, however, exhausted her embers. She wants anything but a return to blood. Do you know what Occam's razor is? To those who don't know, it's just basically the simplest possible solution is the right one. This poem is called Remain. Barefoot across the moon, I learned to stop thinking and enjoy time, which hiding in plain sight doesn't matter like it did. I use a razor to carve the universe into Occam with all her rainbows and prejudices against the damaged union of past truth. Forgiveness nears its end, less than necessity, more than this cage star just below the hum of my dreams. I push the nib of my pen harder and harder to create a permanent space for these words, just as I push away the signs that fate shines in front of me, in the hope that I shall dissolve and meaning shall remain. This one is called Apocalypse. There are not too many more, don't worry. Against the sky, I see a reflection of the peregrination of my soul. With my battered heart and your quiet sound, after all the different ways of waiting, I chase this dark, sulphurous sun that I was told had once existed. For the ghost of desire, I hunted great distances, searching for anything that hadn't been burnt, some fresh blood, but time weaves these strange patterns on my skin, closing walls within, making me heavier. You spoke of a love in the days extinct, but frankly it sounds like something that merely speaks to one's perversion. Prison is not about being free, even if not all days I burn the same. The sands act as a guide in this long cortege to which I have committed myself, moving forward to a place away from the old world, further and further, until even in the terrible stare of this light, I'm unable to find the silhouette of the past. As I cross this space, I ask myself what it means to come this far. Is it a man to who I look, called different names in different places? What shall I ask him when we meet? What wounds shall I ask him to heal? Maybe I'll just rest my head and listen to my breath the way I did before the hunger bleached the peace away. A lot of these poems are, in a strange way, about a path to a force greater than oneself. I don't ever call that force God, but a lot of these poems are about the sublimation of self. Ache. An idea with its centrifugal pull is the way out of a terrible silence, a gift for the night, holding on to the rain as she waits to escape. The stars vanish into tears, into thickets of transference, asking why love has to earn its purity through suffering, like the movement of God from stone. In not being interested in the unfelt, in mythical imperfections within, above its scars search for shadows, above the distances that twist you in their search, it gives birth to a rhythmic ache of disappointment. I refuse to surrender to the hands of breath that enclose me. The day goes beyond. Believer as marionette, its command merely remain. Dreams. Tomorrow is a place that I hear more clearer than sound, which spreads within, making my heart rise. Inside it lies a need deeper, like the conquering roar of fire. I light the surface on which I have been standing to forget what we are waiting for. Before leaving for this passage to infinity, I carve my past into a frieze which will always remain as a protection against forgetting. Change, a desire I no longer wish to subsume. Already where I come from is life twice burnt. Across time we hide whenever discovered. In the place where words come from, we hide our dreams. They will be the first to be hunted when the night ends. I think that's not for me, that's for all the poets and all the writers out there. I'll just read that again. Across time we hide whenever discovered. In the place where words come from, we hide our dreams. They will be the first to be hunted when the night ends. Should I read more? Okay, I'll read a few more. This one is called The Impossible. A conscious theology, serene in its suffering, puts forth a seduction of the shrouded. Godhead in all its glory, neatly pinned down, not to be addressed, not to be understood, to be worshipped in its exactitude, absent from love, readied into performance. Endless bargains made by the faithful to defend their perfectly chosen. I see what I do to you by the wish list of the divine, the celebration of the blank gaze of uniformity, safety in the linear, purified by acid. In subsuming you, I don't like what it becomes. The moment to which you are not blinded, ruled by the autonomy of innocence, is a crash, a collision into what is vital, into what is real. In freeing the weight of the impossible, let me not forget the survivors of this amoral touch. Basically, this is a book against this is a poem against organized religion. It basically says that, Godhead in all its glory, neatly pinning everybody down, everybody uniform, cleaned by acid. Then what happens to the free thinkers? What happens to the weight of the amoral touch, which really is all of life and love and everything in between?
Excuse me?
Sure, yeah.
What is your concept of God? Your first
Surrender. I think just that. Just surrender and a belief in a power and an action and a thought and a hope that is much better than oneself. So it's a destination. And while I believe, and I'm a believer in powers and divinity much bigger and stronger and more purer than oneself, I think that, in a world which is dominated by the savage transactionalism of our times, and by the anxiety of our individual journeys, I certainly think that it helps. But at the same time, I don't think that it should be used as a crutch. But I believe. As one must do, right? Sure, yeah.
I've read your book, Stillness.
Thank you.
It's a fascinating book. I read leaves.
That's very kind of you. You're probably the only person that read it. Other than my wife and my mother, who I forced.
Leaves you with a quiet thought, I will say. I mean, is it a deliberate attempt on the part to give an abrupt ending to your poems, or is it a
Yes. You know what it is? I totally agree with what you're saying. See, the thing is, when I wrote Stillness, as I was just telling two ladies who were journalists with me earlier, it was a bit disingenuous, because what happened was, Stillness wasn't written as a book. I had 5 poems here, 7 here, 9 here, and I strung them together to make a book because I thought, okay, now I should have a book published. But this book, which is my next book called Surrender, because after Stillness must come surrender, right? I have written this as a book. So I wanted 6ly linked, talking about my journey and who I am in the moment and my feelings and their exploration and their externalization and their internalization at the moment. So basically, the first book I wrote, The Otherness of Self, was a book written in one shot. And that's how I think books should be written, because otherwise they're not true to themselves. So I'll just read 2 or 3 more. This one is called Midnight. Between us, these dark delights tell me the heart is a bad place, a concrete room for sunken desire. The moon as a symbol for memories exiled from the universe. the retraction of which is an infused meditation. Dreams create new alliances, new ways to protect themselves, and show the continuance of their fragility. In this cold night, you seek me out and ask me to reveal myself. Through a window I must tumble, through a door I must slide. If all life is a dialogue between etherea and ephemera, I prefer not to have to explain myself. The night is already aflame, pregnant with the narrative of tomorrow. It's not the tears of the moon that enclose me, it's the unbearable silence of God. This one is called The Joys of Augury. The sky holds forth its variation. In turn, the tongues speak in one voice. The wind stills itself in order to listen more carefully, as the silent man steals his silence further, entering something within himself as he falls deeper into the night. He feels a story overcoming him, and a truth that has lived its entire life in the wild. To know it, it must yield without sensing its capture. A fire must be started to see that which has not been seen, burning blue as it enters its dominion, in singeing bone and flesh and swallowing blood and time. It breathes new life into its victim. It accepts all without judgment. He moves closer, believing in a truth beyond time, searching ravenously for the future. For a sign, the fire speaks. I feel I have known you for so long, and in that time which I haven't is just dust that I want to wash away. So I guess just one or two more now. This one is called Departure. A boy with a radiating insurgency, the idea of which lies buried in a garden, poisoned by hope, by an autumnal rainbow. You build a shrine, complete with pieces of roses and candied blood. I think with my heart ceramic, love is no longer this infinite fire. You told me true love lasts forever. I didn't know forever was a day like today. I protected your hollowed out within like it was a secret God. I thought that love can only ever be an automatic sign, a liberation from the dense patronage of the night. Of what use is a cruelty veiled by a magnificent madness, a madness inimitable in its complexity, a whirlwind trompe-l'oeil? But these are arguments in favor of defeat. I understand the way of the wind and commit myself to the delicate rhythm of departure. I like that line that you guys clapped at. You told me true love lasts forever. I didn't know forever was a day just like today. I like that. It just comes, you know. Sometimes you just want to write things and something. Do I have to go? 5 minutes, sure. Okay, I think I'm not going to read anything anymore. I'm very grateful to be here. People ask me sometimes, what is the connection between public life and poetry? The truth is that there is no real connection. But what I do feel is that life, whether you're a political worker, you're a social worker, you're a teacher, or a librarian, or anybody, that is life. That is like the body. The body wants sustenance. It wants survival. It wants nourishment of a very physical, immediate kind. It wants the ability to carry itself forward. So it's self-perpetuating in all its goals. But poetry is like the soul. It wants to search, it wants to seek, it wants to soar. And poetry I feel is the only way that I can hear myself. Poetry is the greatest gift that anybody can give to themselves. Because we don't read for ourselves. We read almost in celebration of the divine. I once asked a great Odissi dancer, I said, why do you dance? Do you dance because it's the only thing you know? Do you dance because you enjoy it? Do you dance to earn money because you're famous? Why do you, or because you don't know what else to do? And he said, I dance as a celebration to the divine. And I never understood that. But you know, when you write, I write articles. And when you write academically, you're writing for an audience. You're writing so that somebody reads you and they say, okay, this guy's obviously quite bright, he knows his stuff. But when you write poetry, you don't write for anyone because not a lot of people read poetry. Not a lot of people are going to pat your back and celebrate it. Frankly, if I didn't have a famous last name, nobody would have bought my book, right? So the fact is that that's unfortunately the truth. But the fact remains that you don't write so that you can sell 10,000 copies of a book. You write because you must. And today is the first time that I've really come and read my poetry aloud. And I really felt at home, and I felt a lot of kindness in this room, and I felt a lot of blessings coming my way unconsciously. Thank you for having me. Thank you. If there's any last tomatoes you want to chuck my way, or yeah, please. Just one or two last questions. Yeah. What, ambiguity. You know, the thing is, it's a very good question. The thing is that, you know, I would put it a different way. Can we use the word mysticism instead of ambiguity? That's all. So I think that because when we write, right, we're not going to an exact place. We're going somewhere, and like as a painter, when you start your painting, you're not sure of how it's going to turn out. Sometimes you paint over it, and you paint over it, and then something emerges from that. And when I write, it's like painting. So I don't know what's going to come out of it. Sometimes I'll write 3 lines, and the final poem has everything except those 3 lines. So a lot of these poems are about mysticism, you know, not the way that Blake was talking about it, not the way that Yeats was talking about it, but the fact that we're all incomplete beings with this sublime desire for completion. And we write because it's one step forward to that completion. We know we're never going to reach there, but we must walk one step forward at a time. Yeah. Sorry? No. Thank you. It's very sweet of you. Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Where I come from, burnt already twice, or like burnt twice.
Yeah, life twice burnt.
Yeah, life twice burnt.
Yeah.
So you're actually, when being a politician, you're on fire all the time.
No, you know what it is? I'll tell you what I meant by that was not, you know, being burnt is a different literary connotation to being on fire. What I mean is that when you look at the syntax of the fight ahead, right? That poem seeks to understand that the fight already exists within. You don't have to go seek out a challenge because already you're twice burnt. And existence itself is a huge burn. You don't need to seek out fresh burns. Yeah? Yeah, one last.
I was there when your father went. I never thought it would cause such a big event. It saddens me to see that there is no unity in the community. This is just non-political.
Thank you. Any last question? Yeah, the lady at the back. Yeah.
The poem seemed to be implicitly talking about suffering. So, what do you think about the human position of it?
The human position of faith.
Suffering.
You know, Buddha said all life is suffering. That was the first thing that he really said when he came out of prayer. But then he also said that, you know, that the alleviation or the mitigation of suffering can be achieved through the controlling of desire. So I hope that I'm on a road to being the Buddha. No. I hope that I'm on some kind of transcendental road. And these poems for me are transcendental. And yes, suffering is a huge part of existence. But suffering should also bring forth an enunciation of strength and of hope and of kindness. Because when you realize that you are suffering and that everyone in this room is suffering together, it makes you a better person because you don't want anybody to suffer anymore. So ultimately, the only truth is love and the only truth is kindness. Thank you. Thank you.